One major problem that has plagued this current administration will be the high level of insecurity that has gained momentum under its watch, as banditry and kidnappings have become the order of the day. Innocent citizens have lost loved ones to terrorists or are made to pay heavy ransoms to secure their release in most cases. The high level of abductions across the country by terrorists is almost bringing the country to its knees, begging for divine intervention. With the 2023 general election around the corner, the high level of insecurity might threaten the electoral process if it is not tackled aggressively. Joining us on this show this morning as we discuss the insecurity in Nigeria and what the government is doing about it as we gradually approach the 2023 general elections is General Lucky Irabor, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff. Welcome to the morning show, General Irabor. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation. Good morning, General.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abati and the team.
Thank you for
joining us. Glad to be here.
Thank you. Let's start with this. The rising spate of insecurity all over the country continues to remain a source of major concern for all Nigerians. Why is it that the military establishment, which you heard, has not been able to put a lead on rising violence and criminality in the country?
Well, thank you for the question. Let me say that the military is not alone in redressing all issues of insecurity in the country. And to also say that it would be inappropriate to say that the military has not been able to put a lead to the issues of insecurity in Nigeria. This is because quite a lot has happened. Perhaps if the military and of course other security agencies who are responsible for redressing these issues, if they've not undertaken the kind of actions they've done in the past, perhaps the situation would have been worse than what it is. But of course, the fact that there are still incidents of insecurity across the country means that there's quite a lot of work to be done, and that's what we are committed to doing. So I'd like to assure you, and of course by extension all Nigerians, that we are leaving no stone unturned to redress the security imbalance across the country.
Yeah. Now, from the intelligence at your disposal, would you say that Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorists operating in the northeast have some links to bandits in the northwest?
Well, thank you. Severally we have had to acknowledge the fact that based on the very serious work we're doing in the northeast, having dealt a huge blow on the ISWAP Boko Haram terrorists in the northeast, many of them are now relocating to find safer havens. In this case, they found some places in the northwest to link up with other elements or other criminal elements in that part of the country. So this is what we have acknowledged in the past. But again, we haven't observed that. We have also heightened our operational engagement. I'm sure you know that in the northwest we have Operation Hadarin Daji, and the north central we currently have Operation White Punch, Operation Thunderstrike, and Operation White Stroke to be able to redress all issues of insecurity in these parts of the country. So yes, of course there are linkages, and you must also not discount the fact that the northwestern part of Nigeria, is where we have boundaries with Niger. And then, of course, I believe that you are aware of the issues that is, happening with the Islamic State in West African province, especially for the Greater Sahel region, which, by extension, draws some form of, inroads or, if you like, interaction with the global, or if you like, the larger ISWAP element. So it's not impossible that the incursions could be, are also from those our northern borders. So the aggregate of all this is what, of course, you're finding happening in the Northwest. But of course, I'd like to assure you once again that we are taking every measure to ensure that the menace does not go beyond what it is currently.
Right. This government continues to tell a lot of people out there and all of us in the country that the Boko Haram has been largely degraded and no longer occupies any territory in the northeast. However, we continue to get reports of the terrorist group still controlling large swaths of land in states like Borno, which have even become no-go areas for the military. What's your take on this? What's happening?
Well, Rufa, I do not want to agree that that's what the government says. It's not what the government says, but what it is. The reality is that the northeast, region, especially Borno State, it's a lot has changed. In fact, life is almost normal in Borno State. That I can tell you. So it's not a claim. It is what exists. I believe that you have correspondents in Maiduguri. Perhaps you may want to, have a check back on them. So there is no control of any part of Borno State at all. That I can tell you. But of course, those criminal elements are not completely out of circulation, and that's why we still have, large presence of military in those areas. But what we, are doing is to ensure that the last mile issues connected to it are redressed, and then also bringing in and scaling up the presence of not just the police, but of course Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps, for them to gradually begin to take the center stage in terms of normal security provisioning, in the light of the successes we've recorded. So please be assured that it's not just a claim by government, that is the reality on ground. And I'm glad that the Borno State governor himself, recently, told Nigerians how things have largely improved in Borno State. So you may also want to get a fact check from him, since the security of the state itself, first and foremost, he lies right in his hands. But I can tell you that the support he has given to us, and the support, and of course the larger Borno citizens, is what we're leveraging to build upon, and ensuring that no part of the state or no iota of insecurity continues to take place.
Well, General, can you give us an update on the attempt by the military to rescue the Abuja-Kaduna train victims, as well as other victims that are still being held in captivity by their abductors? And is it really true that these victims are used as human shields, making it difficult for the military to rescue them?
Well, Mr. Bharti, I like to appeal that I refrain from indicating what we're doing with respect to the Abuja-Kaduna train incident victims. What is clear, and which I need to reassure Nigerians, is that quite a lot is happening. I'm sure, 2 weeks ago, the release of the 11, victims should tell Nigerians that quite a lot is happening, that government is doing quite a lot. I wouldn't, say that they are using anybody as human shield. A human shield or no human shield, we will continue to conduct our operations. But beyond, the military line of operation, you equally know there are other non-kinetic lines of operation which, it's part of the entire, security architecture and redressing all the issues with respect to these abductions and other, incidents of criminality across the country. So while looking up to the military, yes, of course, we are in the lead, but of course, there are other elements that are involved in the entire process. So I like to assure Nigerians that very soon, all those who are held captives will regain their freedom. And of course, those criminal elements behind these criminal acts will certainly be brought to justice.
Is the military involved in attempts to apprehend the perpetrators of the attack on St. Francis Xavier Catholic Church in Owo, Osun State? If yes, can you please update us on the efforts to apprehend the perpetrators of that horrendous attack?
Well, I'm glad you said, efforts that are on. Yes, we are part and parcel of the overall architecture to, bring to justice those who are behind the war incident. But if you allow me, I'd like to again appeal that because it's an ongoing operation that we do not, you excuse me from giving further details on it. I think what we need to focus on is the fact that there are very potent actions that are being undertaken, and that those who are behind that criminal act will be brought to justice, and equally that peace and security return to every part of the country. So let's be more positive, let's be more concerned about what is being done to, to bring peace and security and to enable every Nigerian to go about their normal duties rather than focusing on, people who want to make us believe that we are unsafe, which of course remains the entire goal of any criminal element, especially for terrorist gangs. So I'm more focused on the positives rather than, issues that tend to drag us and be an obstruction to our work processes.
Okay, Sidious, you said that the military has done a lot in Borno and they've cleared most areas. But I'd like you to react to a story in Vanguard of the 12th of January 2022, where Governor Zulum mentioned the fact that Boko Haram is still in control of 2 Borno LGAs. And if you read that story further, he says there are some highways like Damboa and the likes and southern Borno where Boko Haram is collecting taxes from people. I'd like you to react to that story. And I also want you to tell us, what the military has been doing as regards technology deployment to fight crimes and all of that. And really, can you sincerely assure us that our military personnel are adequately equipped, well taken care of, well remunerated, to address all the security challenges? Because we always hear about issues of welfare and the likes.
Well, thank you, Rufai. I'm glad that the reference you made, of the newspaper publication was that of January 12th. And today is 29th of June. So that tells you is, well over 5 months after that, publication was made. And it might also interest you that, at the beginning of the year, I assured Nigerians as to what the military and other security agencies will be doing. Now, between that time and now, there have been massive deployment of equipment and material to the Northeast. That's why Northeast currently is silent. That's why the governor, in his recent pronouncement, made mention of, peace that has largely returned to the state. And in his words, that he, in fact, he sleeps with his eyes closed 85% of the time. And I think that's the expression that he made. And is quite vocal about that. And not just him, but, I've had calls from well-meaning, citizens of Borno who, of course, have commended the military for what they have done. But, of course, I'm not saying that it's only the military that have made this contribution, but we largely have contributed to the state of peace in Borno currently. So it's not to say that in the past we have not had issues. We have had issues, but I'm talking about today, currently, what exists and what obtains in Borno State. Now, additionally, Excuse me. Additionally, I need to also, mention that when I mentioned the issue of massive deployment of equipment, I'm also talking about, things that have to do with technology. Those equipment are not just, what I call mundane equipment. No, we're also dealing with modern equipment. So the aggregate of the use of all this have led us to what we've done. Now, talking about, whether the military is adequately equipped. Now, adequate perhaps is relative, and if we are not adequately equipped, then of course we wouldn't have made the result in the Northeast. But is this sufficient? Certainly is not. That's the reason why, Mr. President, and I must use this opportunity to thank him for the support he has given to us. It's quite massive. I must admit, and I must also keep letting Nigerians that within the limits of the resources available to government, we have had a very fair share of allocations to equip and train to redress the security situation across the country. But we need to get more. Why? Because threat is transforming. I believe that Nigeria, it's not an island to itself. You also know what is happening across the globe. So in the light of all these developments, and if you also look at even the technology, deployment of technology which you talked on, it doesn't come cheap. So it's in the light of that our demands will always continue not only to increase, but of course continue to be there. Why? Because these are essential to be able to keep the security situation to a state where everyone will assume that there is insecurity in the country. I mean, where everyone will assume that there is no insecurity, there's no threat of insecurity in the country. So I'm urging the press to also join in this fight to not just bring consciousness to Nigerians, but equally to sensitize the populace, for them to know that they have a part to play, and for the press also to take the fight to the criminal element. You must, find a way to, expose, their criminality. Not necessarily that, you will not focus on what government and government security agencies are doing, but it must be put in the right context to know that we live in the same environment and we are all victims together if we do not act. So for me, that's the way to go. And I believe that Arise, television is doing well, but I need you to please join along with the rest of your colleagues to focus attention on what will keep us on the positive track rather than the negativities.
Okay, General, despite everything you have said, we have seen several videos of soldiers, especially those that have been deployed in theaters of war, complaining that they have been abandoned by the military establishment, that they are ill-equipped, and that their allowances are not paid as and when due. Why do such videos continue to emerge?
Well, if there are videos of that nature, I want to believe that certainly they are not within the last 2 years. They were not made within the last 2 years. That I can confidently tell you, and indeed I will beat my chest to tell you, that soldiers or members of the armed forces today will not say that their allowances are not being paid. That cannot be correct. That certainly cannot be correct. And I need you to take me on it. So if there is anyone in the armed forces today who says their allowances, either they are deployed in operation and they are in the rear areas or they are engaged in one task or the other and their allowances are not being paid, I would like you to take me on it. But then we live in a world where social media has become, almost a government of itself. So anybody can regurgitate, past videos. Some others can also, create videos and claim that these are, men and women of the armed forces. But I do not focus on those inanities. I'm more focused on the job ahead, and I want to use the opportunity to also appreciate, the service chiefs who have been, quite up to the task. I mean, wonderful team that I have dealing with the nuances of operations and logistics administration of the armed forces. They've done incredibly well. But again, from the larger society point of view, because these things are still ongoing, they are not over yet, so it might not be, too appropriate to now say, okay, all is well. But I like to tell you that our eyes are fixed on the ball. The goal is there, and we are pursuing the goals. The mandate is clear. The mandate from the commander-in-chief is clear, and we are committed to meeting these mandates.
In the Niger Delta, oil theft and vandalism are taking a toll on the country's economy. What are the Nigerian Navy and the Joint Task Force doing to end this menace? Also, military personnel have been accused of colluding with criminal elements in the Niger Delta. How is this being addressed?
Well, the Niger Delta issue, of course, the Navy, Operation Delta Safe, not just the Navy, but of course the Army. The Navy focuses more on the larger body of waters, but of course you also find that there are estuaries and oil and gas installations. You find that upland areas, there are a lot of installations that the Army has oversight. So a combination of the activities of members of the armed forces, and of course not also discounting the contribution of the Air Force, who provide ISRs and sometimes even helicopter-borne operations to be able to redress issues of insecurity within the Niger Delta. And the results are clear. The Navy within the last year and a half have been able to maintain a clean maritime environment, especially when you're talking about the shipping lanes, such that currently you do not have any reports of piracy and all the likes. But of course, there are problems that have to do with crude oil theft, vandalism of the pipelines and other associated issues, which we are dealing with in concert with other members of the defense and security agencies. So, so far, so good. And even though there's still, a long haul, but then, I must say that quite a lot of improvement has been made. But I must also use this opportunity to say that the citizens of the Niger Delta, or the inhabitants of the Niger Delta, who we are also sensitizing for them to collaborate more with us, need to do greater, take greater responsibility, because the environment that is being polluted by these criminals, it is those who inhabit these areas that will be worse for it. Even when the issue of oil and gas, theft is forgotten, the environment, the degradation in the environment alone is going to have its effect in the next 30, 50 years. So it is from that context that I would like to urge every citizen of the Niger Delta, or every inhabitant of the Niger Delta, to collaborate more with the armed forces and members of the security agencies, for them to be able to put a stop to these acts of criminality in the Niger Delta. Now, you talked about the collusion, or the alleged collusion of members of the armed forces in some of these criminal acts. Well, those are allegations. I do not also, run away from the fact that, there may be moles amongst us, and that's why we take action, disciplinary action, against any act of indiscipline that we find. A lot of our personnel have faced court-martials. Some have been sent to prison. Some also have been dismissed. But that is only, a very small number compared to the establishment itself, the institution. So if there are one or two persons who have, been involved in one form of criminality, the issue is, have they been caught? Have they been dealt with? Why use them to now, have, assessment to make up the assessment for, the larger armed forces? So for me, that is not the reason why we have problems. I do not subscribe to it, and the armed forces that I lead is a professional armed forces. We have men and women that are patriotic, doing the job that they were sent to do, and I'm proud of every one of them. And of course, for the ones that have soiled our name, that's the reason why we have dealt with them in the manner that we've done. So going forward, I'd like to appeal to all Nigerians to please give information to members of the armed forces, give information to the police, give information to the security agencies, and they should also know that security remains everybody's business. Do not shy away from reporting anyone whose ways are not right. If you don't, then of course you'll be the loser. But I know that as we continue to sensitize Nigerians, greater cooperation will be achieved.
Right. So beyond the Niger Delta, some military personnel have also been accused of collaborating with bandits and Boko Haram terrorists to launch attacks on our armed forces, even to provide them with military-grade arms and ammunition. Have such personnel been brought to book? Can you say holistically they've been brought to book? And what are you doing to ensure that those terrorist groups do not infiltrate, indoctrinate, and compromise our military personnel? And I'll refer you to an interview we had with Sheikh Gumi a while back, where he talked about this strongly. And he said, the army is split down the middle, even across lines of religion. We had words like that. And he talked about, this infiltration. Well, what do you say to things like that?
Well, first and foremost, Rufai, the armed forces remains a professional armed forces. We have procedures, we have protocols, both operational protocols, logistics protocols, and administrative protocols. Now, we do not take lightly issues of vetting, issues of ensuring that we have the right person with the right aptitude to be part and parcel of the armed forces. So there is a filtration process, there's a filtration mechanism that is already put in place so that when we recruit, each of our recruits will pass through those, what I may call crucible for the purpose of understanding. So those filtration processes are there. But of course, we also know that we live in the same environment where these criminals also live. These criminals, each and every one of us, will come from families. And some of these families are also the families where many of these criminal elements, where they come from. So in the light of that, of course, you can't run away from the fact that there are some who, for one reason or the other, may, go out of line. And that is the reason why every attempt they have made, we have discovered them by virtue of our intelligence, both overt and covert, and also institutionalizing the court-martial processes that have, made us to send them to jail. So those who, in the earlier discussion that we had, that I referred to as modes, it is from that, standpoint that they were dealt with, sent to jail, dismissed from the service. So it is not, we are not in any way going to be deterred by, some of those reports that, which you referred to. Many of those reports too, could be exaggerated. But again, for me and for the leadership of the armed forces, one single case is bad enough, and that's why we take it very seriously.
We're talking about reports, General. There have been reports also that have been released by human rights groups, such as Amnesty International, on rights abuses by the military, including extrajudicial killings and even in some instances, rape, sexual abuse of women, and all of that. What is the military doing under your watch to shake off these damning allegations against men of the armed forces?
Well, Amnesty International, I want to believe about you're referring to, past reports. And the recent reports of Amnesty International, I'm not aware that there are reports of the like that you've just mentioned. But of course, you need to also know that this insecurity that we're facing, there are many roots to it. There are many strands to it, and Amnesty International does not live here. I mean, when I say does not live here, the structure that they have are only by virtue of individuals, only by virtue of those who, in one way or the other, build up their report from sometimes what they hear from people, other times what they feel that have happened. But beyond that, I want to assure you that the members of the armed forces, especially, we keep to the tenets of human rights limits. We are professional in form, we are professional in disposition, and so there are rules of engagement, and we strictly abide by them. And then, of course, within our orbit, we have made provisions for human rights desk. So there are officers who, on a daily basis, their responsibility is to ensure that troops keep to the rules of engagement, ensuring that the limits of the international humanitarian law is kept, as they conduct their operation. So for me, I'm so proud of the armed forces that I lead, and I'd like to, tell not just the press, but the rest of the world, for them to know that if there were any issues of human rights violations in the past, certainly not as we have currently. Certainly not. It does not exist currently. And going forward, we'll keep refining the process. We'll keep refining, our approach to conduct of operations, and every Nigerian will be proud that they have the kind of armed forces that we have.
Right, thank you, General. But I want to draw your attention to news that broke last night about communal clashes in Cross River State, a community called Inko, where members of the armed forces are being accused of killing, raping, and burning down houses. I just want to bring that to your attention. You might want to comment on that specific allegation from last night, and also ask another question about the fact that our government, the Nigerian government, has expended considerable resources procuring Super Tucano jets from the U.S. Are these planes now being used in combat missions, and how have they helped to suppress terrorist attacks?
All right, thank you. The incident in Nko community in Cross River, as well as Obobra, yes, it was not yesterday, it was actually 3 days ago. I'm aware, and the troops were never involved in any issue of raping and destruction. No, that's not correct. Rather, and I'm glad that you rightly mentioned it, that it was a communal clash. So what is the business of the military in being involved in communal clash? But of course, because lives were being lost, and we have military deployment around those areas. It was on the basis of that the commanding officer of the unit went to go to redress the problem that he had. Now, getting to the scene, the communities, one of the communities, for whatever reason, because they were armed, they shot at the commanding officer, wounded him, and also wounded about 5 soldiers. And so, no officer would see his men being wounded when he has come to keep the peace. No soldier will stand idle and then see, citizens, unleashing mayhem, not amongst themselves only, but equally taking up arms against those who have come to bring sanity to the environment. So it was at that point that he insisted that those who shot at the commanding officer and the soldiers should be apprehended. In fact, let me tell you that in one of those communities, a former chief of naval staff, that's where he comes from. So would you think that the armed forces that he was a part of will now want to go and destroy his community? No. But you see, these are reports that are being peddled. Don't forget that there are 2 communities that were involved. Now, what is being peddled is that that the military is, destroying one community. It only tells you that perhaps some individuals who may not have been happy with the intervention of the military may just come up with some form of falsehood and propaganda that could, dissuade the understanding of Nigerians about the matter. So, but what I need to assure you, and of course assure Nigerians, is that the military, it's apolitical, and we do not take sides. We are there to give support to the civil authority, in this case the police, especially on this matter of Unko and Obobra. So that's and I thought I needed to put that in context. Now, on the issue of Super Tucanos, yes, of course, we are grateful to the federal government for undertaking that huge investment, and those aircraft, those pieces of equipment have added to, the effort in redressing the insecurity that we have. And they've played their part, but of course, it's not that because we have gotten Super Tucano, then all our problems are solved. No, there are so many things that we still require. But I must say that Super Tucanos have actually added in redressing the problems that we have. And that's why, you find, that, our operational gains are increasing on a daily basis. So as we build up our combat capability, then of course it aggregates to operational effectiveness in our operations.
All right, so CDS, as you talked about on call, as peace returned, and is everything settled now in that area as regards that situation that happened? And secondly, in your own opinion, do you think that a political solution can help douse the violence, and the attacks allegedly being carried out, by the Eastern Security Network and the so-called unknown gunmen in the Southeast, and concerning that, which a lot of people also to make allegations against the military, as regards, killings of people in the Southeast and extrajudicial killings and the likes and things like that?
Rufai, I'm glad that you asked that question. Since the beginning of mankind, political solution, or if you like, military solution has never brought total peace, if you like, total resolution of a conflict. So for every conflict that the military have ever been involved, the military only lays the platform for other means of conflict resolution to be conducted. So in this case, of course, political solution lies at the root of the resolution of all crises. Whether it is Boko Haram, whether it is IPOB, whether it is all manner of agitations, there are things that that are almost all of them must end within the purview of political settlement. Why? Because when we're talking about political settlement, we're also looking at issues of governance. So in the local governments across the length and breadth of the nation, what is the level of development? What is the level of empowerment of the citizens? How have we been able to provide, skills acquisition, that will enable citizens to not just be self-employed, but also be engaged in meaningful entrepreneurial, issues. The federal government, of course, is doing quite a lot. I'm sure you know the programs of youth empowerment that the federal government is doing. But let it also distill to the states and local governments, and not just having them in smaller numbers, smaller packets, but then let it be an exponential growth of entrepreneurial skills development and acquisition across the length and breadth of the country, so that those who perhaps what you may describe as idle hands will find something doing. And so when they find something doing, then of course the propensity to engage in criminal enterprises will be reduced. Then the security agencies can now be free to be able to zero in on those who want to make criminal engagement their day-to-day engagement. Then so for me, this is the way to go, and I believe that yes, whatever suggestions that anybody has that could translate to political settlement of any crisis, of course, it would be a good thing to escalate it to the appropriate quarters for it to be implemented. But then that there are political solutions does not mean that we, as members of the armed forces, we just fold our hands to say, okay, political solution could have solved this, so because it has not solved it, then we'll leave our nation to be born in. No, certainly not. That's why on a daily basis, members of the armed forces, you find that they are empowered to join, to support the police and ensure that our land is not turned to to a jungle where law and order does not find its way. So this is precisely informs our engagement to the form that you now find across the 36 states of the Federation. So going forward, I believe that I listened to Abati when he was giving the primer for this interview, talking about the elections that are coming. We believe, and I like to assure you and assure Nigerians that the election 2023 will be conducted under a secure atmosphere. That's a guarantee that I want to leave with you on this interview and for Nigerians. That certainly is what we are working very closely with. We've mapped out our plans along with the police and other security agencies, and we're escalating all our operational engagements to ensuring that we provide security guarantees that will enable INEC and, of course, all the stakeholders who are engaged in that exercise, which is a national exercise that the whole world is looking up to Nigeria for, that it will be conducted, under a secured environment. That is a guarantee, and we are working very assiduously to ensuring that.
Well, thank you, General. I guess that will be all. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.